Both the bakelite block and the inside of this tone control where that other potting compound was will need to be cleaned real good, and as I told you, a Q-tip does a really good job with a little bit of lacquer thinner on it, and as you can see, it just really cleans it right out of there. Real easy. It really does a good job. So use your Q-tip for cleaning up that old black potting compound. Just be careful with it. Once again, don't use it in the house, and it does have strong fumes. Alright, there she is. That's looking real good. I'll put a capacitor in there and mount that in today, I hope. And this is the inside of your bakelite block after it's been all cleaned out with a Q-tip. Well, as you can see, we've got the 1 watt 20K resistor soldered on. We soldered it on this lead and this lead because that is where the two leads from the capacitor on the inside of the block, the new capacitor, the leads come up through that hole right there, and of course the ground hole right here, which now matches up to the schematic. I did not have an exact 0.3 microfarad capacitor, but I did have a 0.33, which is well within the ballpark, not a problem. And here's what that looks like inside the block. Block's nice and clean. We got that old capacitor in there. That looks much better, much neater, much nicer. But we still have a little something left to do on this. Every chance I get to work, when I work on a radio like this, whether it be the ECAP can, the electrolytic can, or one of the bakelite blocks, I try to make a little time capsule out of it. So there's the note that goes in the time capsule. But there's still something else. A dollar bill goes in there with the note. Who knows, maybe 50, 100 years from now, somebody can actually buy a tenth of a cup of coffee with that dollar bill. I wish I could be there and watch it be opened someday. As my old buddy up in Indiana, old Daniel, he's a feller I buy parts from once in a while. Every time he sees me do this, put a dollar inside either a filter can or a bakelite block, he says, "Well, there goes another 33 cents of American money down the tubes." The way this bakelite block goes back in is this long screw goes through a fiber washer, and it goes through a fiber mount which has a terminal lug on it. Now this terminal lug has nothing to do with the bakelite block. It's simply mounted there, and there's no physical connection other than the screw going through the bakelite board that the terminal lug is mounted on. It's simply there to connect all these wires to. They all had to come together somehow. I have a resistor that needs to connect to it, a couple of wires here. This resistor has to come down. It all gets wrapped around this lug right here. They needed a convenient place to do it, and just an easy way to make it happen. So that's how they did it. So this entire screw mechanism will come from the rear. It'll come through the chassis, up through the hole on the bakelite block, and it'll kind of be kicked. The lug will kind of be around to the side like this, where it can be utilized, like so. And then this nut and lock and star washer. Now it's important to use a star washer because you want a good solid ground. Remember, I went over that the last video, and those star washers bite into that metal all the way around it and really give a good ground between the chassis, which I cleared a spot on the chassis real good, made it nice, nothing but metal there, that the head of the screw here will go up against. So let's put that whole thing in. I'll show you what I'm talking about. And there it is back in. Now this wire right here, and this capacitor will be changed out, and this end of it will be soldered to the ground side of that bakelite block. They picked up a ground for this capacitor by using the ground on the bakelite block. Other than that, there's no other connection to it. There's a couple of wires back here that need to be soldered onto the very last leg where the other end of the 0.33 capacitor is connected. And I'll have to change out this capacitor and solder this end to this lug right here. This resistor will get soldered to the lug. Here's another wire here to get soldered to the lug. So now you know why they needed that common lug, to have a place to solder all these things. So once I get this capacitor out, and get everything soldered back up, just about everything from this point on the chassis this way will have been completed. The rest is electrolytic stuff and a couple of resistors that have to be tested, and if they're bad they'll be changed out, and we'll be just about done, folks. Probably the most complicated part will be these electrolytics. I'd like to do a mounting terminal strip in there. I'm not sure how that's going to work out. We'll see. And I also still have to put in the tone control. So I'll be sticking, I think I'll put a capacitor in there next and show you how that's done. Yeah, for you schematic lovers, let's take another look at this thing. I'm getting ready to install the capacitor inside the tone control box and put the tone control back into the chassis up through that hole right there. So let's take a look at what we've got. We have one wire that I disconnected from the tone control when I first started this restoration. It was the only wire hooked to it. And according to the schematic, I'm supposed to have a 0.02 microfarad capacitor that should go inside that box right there. And this will be the one we stick in there, right there. Now you'll notice there's two connections on it, one here and one here. There's a tab and there's a tab. One of the tabs has a wire that runs all the way back, all the way down. We'll just do this the way I showed you in the beginning. It runs north, west, south, back to the west, north, and then back to the west, and it hooks to a connection between a 0.02 microfarad capacitor and a 20K. So let's see if that wire right here is the wire that connects between the cap and the resistor. There it is right there. There's the 20K resistor, and you can see the cap down there below it. Right down in there. The yellow cap. Okay. So this wire is properly connected. But there was no second wire on the tone control that I took out of it. The one that had the bottom cut off, if you'll remember. No second wire. But there's got to be a second wire because we have the stubs of two wires and the connections for two wires. What do we do now? Let me see where it goes. Now the other wire, after it comes through the capacitor, which is this yellow one right there that we're going to put in, once it comes through the capacitor, it goes through another capacitor, then goes south all the way down and hooks to the negative side of the electrolytics, which is hooked to the center tap. The center tap, we all know what that is from me going over the power transformer wiring. So there's where one part of it goes. Now another part of it comes out of that capacitor. This one here again. And it goes up and it connects to pin 2 on the 42 tube. Now you see where I told you if you number all your pins in advance, how much easier it is when it comes time to trace wires out. Otherwise, if I didn't have that label, I'd have to go look on the computer and find out what pin this is and then get them labeled in the beginning. It makes life a whole lot easier. So comes up, goes north, west, and connects, then south, and then hooks to pin 2 on the 42 tube. But that wire, I can't find it anywhere. I can't find that wire anywhere. The only one I can find is this one. So what do I do? Some guys go, my God, I don't know what to do. It's not there. What do I? Well, there's only one thing you can do, folks. That is, you got to grab yourself a Hostess cupcake. Take a big old bite out of that sucker, and the whole world will just instantly get better. I just love that cream. Man, I feel like I'm in a troubleshooting mode now. Man alive. Tell you what, I'm going to finish up my old cup of coffee here and my old cupcake. And then we're going to come back and I'm going to tell you what we get to do about that. Because we got to get this thing back in. Piece of cake. You'll love it. This wire here, once I connect it, will complete the entire tone control circuit. Because this wire here that goes over to this 3000 picofarad cap, which is a mica cap, and goes all the way down to the negative side of the two electrolytics and connects into the center tap. That wire from pin 2 is there, but from pin 2 to the tone control is what's missing. The deed is done. The capacitor is in and it's hooked to this terminal right here, and I've spliced a wire onto the end of it, and I will be running that wire underneath the band switch. The tone control goes here. I'll run the wire down underneath the band switch, or as close to the bottom as I can get it, and run it over, and I'll solder it onto pin 2 of the 42 tube, which is right there. Also, this wire right here is kind of ratty looking. I've decided to go ahead and change it out. I'll be changing it with this wire right here, which I will solder to this terminal right there. And once we get it in, it'll be all done. Now there is one more thing I want to show you on the schematic before wrapping this tone control business up. A few years ago, a fellow named Kurt Reed, who was a member of the Antique Radio Forum, poor fellow passed away not too long ago, suddenly, overnight. Wasn't even expecting it to happen, but he just passed away. Anyway, he told me that when you have a tone control capacitor that comes straight off the plate of the output tube, that you better replace that capacitor with a much higher voltage rating than these yellow 630 volt caps are. He said go way high, 1000 volts, 1300 volts if possible, because he said spikes come off of that plate and go down there, and it will just destroy that cap and maybe even cause a fire. Well, the one that I took out of here, the tone control cap that I took out of that potting compound, was fried on one end, completely burned. It looked like somebody took a cigarette lighter to it, which proves correct what Kurt Reed told me. There were a lot of voltage spikes coming out of there, hitting that little old capacitor right there, and just burning it up. So what I'm going to do, the next order I put in, I will request a 0.02 microfarad capacitor rated at 3000 volts instead of the 630 that I have in there now. And that 630 volt capacitor will be taken out and the 3000 volt capacitor put in its place. Well, that's it for this video. The tone control box is in. It houses the 0.02 microfarad capacitor, and a new wire has run all the way across, and it's connected to pin 2 on the 42 tube. A new wire was run from the other connector on the tone control down along the bottom to the junction of this capacitor and this resistor. That's the wire right there. So that's taken care of. Next time we'll take care of the electrolytics. This 2 watt resistor and this 3 watt resistor, one of these is bad. I can't remember which. Maybe I'll replace them both. I don't know. Haven't thought about it yet. And of course we'll have to remove this bakelite block. I'm going to try to remove this one without disconnecting it. Normally you can do that. Unfortunately, this one didn't give me enough room in the wires to do that. So this one here will have to hopefully be able to come out and lay out here on the wires. I'll show you how to do that without having to disconnect everything, hopefully. And that's about it for now. I appreciate everybody stopping in, and one more time. And we'll see you next time. This is John.